So here we are in engineering. We have Kevin Beller here. He's been with the company 44 years, so just after day one. He's designed many of our products over the years. He's done all the original drawings, whether it's a raw material for a vendor to make a mold, or if it's the whole pickup assembly and how that's going to go together. So here he's testing some pickups that went through a pilot run. This is a newer model we're working on, so something that Kevin designed, and now he's checking it after it's gone through production to make sure it was actually made per the design and all the specs are where they need to be.
Yeah, so what we're checking, these are some Jared James Nichols P90 pickups, and they're built on a new technology that we developed. And actually, Jared was one of the first guys to benefit from this. This is a three-coil humbucking design. Most humbuckers are two coils. We came up with a way to do three coils, and the reason for that was because we wanted to maintain the appearance of a standard P90. So they have a row of pole pieces that go right down the center. Most humbuckers that you see, they're either a stack with a central row of pole pieces, or they're a two coil humbucker with pole pieces on one side or the other. This is an improvement on a stack in that you don't get so much low frequency cancellation that you get with a normal stack. So this is it's a cool design. Jared was one of the first guys to try it out. He kind of fell in love with it immediately. And we've done with any new product, we do pilot builds to be able to kind of flush out any problems that are going to occur in production, to see how the assembly procedure flows, to see if there's understanding with our assemblers of how something's going to be built. And especially something like this, it's a little bit more complicated wiring. It's different than anything they've done before. So we have one, maybe two or more pilot builds, however many we think we need to do before everybody is really, things are flowing smoothly, they're understanding what's going on. So after the pilot build, we bring them in here, and there's a whole series of specifications that we check. And right now what I'm checking is I'm checking the resonant frequency. And we have this is an old clanky fixture. We probably built this thing 35 years ago. I have another one at home that's a lot slicker, but this one still does the same job. And we hook the pickup up, and we have a couple wires that we connect to the fixture. We have to make sure the ground wires twisted in. It'll affect the resonant frequency, and we just hook them up, and we have a signal generator, distortion analyzer, but we're just using the signal generation portion, and we basically just scan frequencies a little bit, and we're looking for where the needle peaks, and the kind of fine tune that in, and we can read the frequency off the scope over here. So this one is 4.13 kilohertz resonant frequency. So we go through, we have a form that we've developed for listing all these different specs. We're going to check DCR, which is what most people are really familiar with. We check inductance and Q, resonant frequency, which is what I'm doing here. We'll do Gauss testing to make sure that the magnetic strength is correct. And then we will even do a strum test. And we have an old guitar down here that's our strum tester. I won't pull it out. It's kind of have to crawl under the bench to get it. But it's basically a guitar with three large slots, and it's got a mechanical arm that's spring loaded. And we retract the arm, and we load the pickup in, we retract the arm, and we let it swing across the strings. And then we use a digital oscilloscope to record the peak reading. So we get an actual strum. It's in a real guitar. We record. We usually gather maybe 10 or 15 readings, and then we average them all out because there's always some little variations, and that's part of the information that goes onto our website for the output readings that we get. So it's our own method. I can't say that it's standardized industry wide, but it's what we always use, and it's particular to us.
So earlier John was asking about the different grades of magnet, whether to use a 2 or a 5 or an 8. How does that play a part in the pickup design?
It depends on whether we're trying to duplicate something or we have a design intent of some sort. So if we're duplicating a vintage pickup, and in the case of, like, for example, Joe Bonamassa, we've done a lot of duplication of different guitars. So we go in, we measure the Gauss strength, and that gives us a pretty good indicator of what grade of alnico it is. So in general, as you progress from the lower alnicos, 1s, 2s, 3s, to the higher up to 8 and 10s and 11s, the Gauss strength gets higher in general. 3s are a little bit lower than 2s. That's an exception to the rule. 3s are very low Gauss strength. And there's a alnico 5-7 that's incredibly high Gauss strength. What brings the difference is mostly the alloy, how much cobalt is in the chemical makeup of the grade of alnico. In some cases, they also have methods of orienting the grain structure during the manufacturing of the product itself. So there's what they call chill plates, where they pour the molten material onto a plate and they rapidly put an orientation field in there, and it kind of freezes the grain structure in a certain orientation. You can get really high Gauss strengths, like alnico 5-7 is, it's a highly oriented methodology, like I just described. Some of the other lower grades, like 3s and 2s, are actually considered unoriented. If you were to look up in the spec sheets, it would say, no orientation. But when we magnetize it, obviously we need to have some orientation or they wouldn't really work. But we by our when we magnetize the magnet itself, it gives it a grain orientation, or it gives it a field direction. Generally speaking, most people consider vintage pickups to be the lower grades of alnico, and in general that is true, but still some of the very early Strat pickups are still made with alnico 5s. So you can't just jump in there and go, well, all vintage pickups are alnico 2s and all the newer stuff is alnico 5. Not necessarily true. I've found, as we've gone through some of these old guitars, like for example, Joe Bonamassa had an old Flying V, and really like 50s Flying V, old, and it had alnico 6s in it. So unexpected, you just weren't. I thought, oh, this thing's going to have 2s or 3s or 4s or something, and I measured and I'm like, nope, these are alnico 6s. So you just have to check. There's not any hard, fast rule. Sometimes it was a matter of scarcity. I remember conversations with Seth Glover, and I asked him one time, because this is like the big controversy, what did PAFs really have? He said, well, we used originally alnico 5, but at one point we ran out, so we had to go down and we could get alnico 2s. We were able to, kind of like running down to the hardware store almost, getting what they had and continuing production. Production was the most important thing to Gibson and to Leo Fender. I mean, the whole idea was producing a product and getting it into the marketplace. So, he said the same thing about black plastic. He said we ran out of black, we got cream. We used cream. Sometimes we had mixtures of cream and black, so that's where your zebras came from. The highly prized PAF zebras. But it was a little bit random, and it was all practical. That was what drove it.